I didn't consider when I started filming this video that I would need to do more than one take. So the whole dramatic ripping off of the first page, well, it's not there anymore. This is what it is with houseplants. It's light. And you can Google which plants thrive in low light, and the internet will give you some, but it's not true. No plants thrive in low light, just like no humans thrive off eating crap food. And if you give your plants good light, everything else is easier. You don't need to worry so much about watering. You do need to water, but overwatering, underwatering, your plant can tolerate it a lot more. It can grow faster. It will be less likely to get pests because pests want plants that are struggling, and a plant in good light is not likely to struggle. There is no substitution for good light. You can't do everything else perfectly and have bad light because your plant will still be hungry for light. And the reason this isn't on the internet is because nobody wants to hear it. And I get that, like, as somebody that's killed 200 plants, I want a plant on my bookcase looking cool, but it's just dying very, very slowly. And you might be like, yeah, sure, light is everything, great, but what actually does that mean? What is good light? Most houseplants, like the vast majority of them, come from the tropics, so they want long hours of light. All of them. They don't want like 5 hours, they want the full like 16 hours of light every day. The difference is the volume of light. Some plants want direct light and some plants aren't that bothered. I don't bother with like low light, medium, bright, indirect light. I have plants right in my south facing window or plants further away from windows. And if something like a calathea, they'll sit in an east facing window, but they're wasted in a south-facing window. To make things even more confusing, my south-facing window isn't really that bright because I live in the UK. If you live somewhere closer to the equator, then your south-facing light, that's really bright. And I think one of the problems that the internet has is it cannot cater for every single situation out there. Number 2 on things, right, now you're going to get your dramatic ripping off. Yeah, it's not that dramatic. Number 2 is watering. And I wish I'd known that it isn't as difficult as I thought if you've got your light sorted. I am the sort of person that likes to overthink everything, and I want somebody to tell me exactly when to do things and how to do them. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. However, if you water when the soil is dry, you can't really go far wrong. In winter, it's the same, but it will just take longer for the soil to get dry. And it can be tempting to go like, yeah, but how dry? Like, how will I know when it's dry? And you sort of just have to go, right, I know the difference between wet and dry. I do know that. So just look at it. Generally, if it's crumbling, it's dry. And if it's all, and if it's wet, it's wet. But just trust yourself that you know the difference between wet and dry. And if you're not sure, it's probably going to be fine. Just check again in a couple of days. Number 2 is drainage holes. Now, there's a lot of controversy about drainage holes because some people are like, oh, they definitely need drainage holes. And other people are like, I've kept plants in for 50 years and none of the pots have drainage holes. But it is easier to water plants if they have drainage holes. And I will attempt to show you why using a plant. My orchid will do. Look at this. So imagine this is a pot, but you can't see the bottom. And imagine the roots look like that, but they're covered in soil. I can fill this up, you'd think. Right, I'm watering it, like this. And it's fine. It's your pot and it's got no drainage holes in it, so that water is going nowhere. Over time, it will be absorbed into the soil. But you don't know how fast, so the bottom here is essentially mud. If you're an underwaterer, it's probably fine, and a fairly hardy plant. Like, it's fine. The issue is next time you come to water, you have no idea what's happening. So you're doing this. Okay, this is taking too long. Oh. The roots are actually sat in the soil. And a lot of plants would be fine, but some plants will rot, and there is basically no way of telling. So it's not that no drainage holes is automatically awful and your plants will die. It's that you don't really know what's going on. The third thing, which I've sort of spoiled, is watering cans. Now, this is nothing to do with actual plant care. It's more to do with your attitude to your plants and how boring watering with watering can is. Also, a lot of the watering cans are like this and very pretty, but that I've got like a lot of plants and I just can't be arsed refilling it over and over again. And I'm less likely to fertilise because it's a whole big thing, like putting it in and then measuring it out. And I use one of these. It is a pressure sprayer. You saw before, you can change you can either use the nozzle or not use the nozzle, and it's faster. That's 5 litres. You can get bigger ones, but then it's more difficult to cart them around the house. But oh my God, they are so much... They're just better for watering. For a start, they're more fun because it's like being a Ghostbuster. You can put your fertiliser in and you can just sort of free pour it. I just use a bit, but I still free pour because I'm like, it's 5 litres. The third thing is, it is so much easier to control how much you're watering your plants. Now, that's not really an issue most of the time. I currently have some Monstera deliciosa seedlings. Right, how am I going to take this lid off without getting water all over my lap? I'm not. I don't want this... This doesn't have drainage holes. So I don't want it to get too wet, but you can just sort of do like a gentle, like a little drizzle. And then your Monstera seedlings will be... I'm trying to work out whether I should say moist. Your Monstera seedlings will be happy, but it won't be overwatered. So yeah, ditch the watering can, get a pressure sprayer. I cannot even begin to describe how much easier it is watering your plants with a pressure sprayer. I do need to fill it up, I think 3 times, but I've got a lot of plants. It's just way more fun, and you're less likely to get water everywhere. Something else people really stress about is water quality, and it is one of those things where I think I might be lacking slightly in my houseplant care, but also lazy people unite. My general theory is that if you can drink the water, your plants probably can too. This is a little peace lily. I'm currently doing a video on keeping peace lilies in water because apparently people really like keeping peace lilies in water. And this is just tap water. Sometimes, I think maybe every other week, I'll add nutrient water and she's fine with that. But you'll see, so you can see there's a brown tip on there. That looks like she's thrown a wobbly because I repotted her and changed the substrate. But also, most of the tips have brown bits on. But when she's all lush and full and lovely, you probably won't be able to tell. I do appreciate you want me to tell you how often to water every plant, but this is what it is. It's water when the soil's dry. And if you think, well, I'm only watering like every 2 months because that's how long it takes the soil to dry out, you don't have enough light. You might have crap soil, but crap soil isn't an issue if you have good light. You'll notice on this next slide, the numbers are wrong. It's not because I can't count, it's because I missed out one when I was numbering them. Humidity and temperature, I think, are the next most important things when it comes to houseplant care. If you sort out your light, you're probably 60% of the way there. Get your water in, you're 75% of the way there. And that's pretty good. 75% is great. Ambient humidity is fine for most houseplants. There are some where it isn't, but that is probably because they're relatively new to the hobby. But the fact is, if your humidity is above 40% and your house temperature is comfortable for you, your plants will be fine. One thing I will say about temperature, my plants were fine and my house used to get very cold in winter. However, we recently had basically our house is, it's not even brick, it's like cladding and a bit of plasterboard. No insulation at all. So we had another wall put in and then insulation put in, and we also have an obnoxiously big radiator. So this room in particular gets very, very warm in winter. And I noticed that the plants all started growing despite the light being... I mean, they get a lot of light because there's 2 massive windows, but it was still winter. And my plants, they weren't like thriving, but they were growing when they wouldn't usually have. The growth was very much winter growth, but they were growing. So if your plants aren't growing and you think everything else is fine, they might be a little bit cold. In winter, I don't keep any plants in my bathroom. In the summer, I've got this unit, it looks very nice, all these like trailing plants, looks lovely. But in winter, they all get crammed in here. And it gets more cramped every year because I'll be like, oh, I've got a gap in the summer. And I'm like, no, it's not a gap. It's reserved for the bathroom guys in winter, but it's filled. Now we will move on to humidity. It's one of those things where your plants can be perfectly fine with ambient humidity. And I'm talking like 40%. But you might notice faster and bigger growth if you do increase the humidity. But if we are increasing humidity, we are using a humidifier. I don't have a humidifier. I have a dehumidifier because I have a very humid house. Because I live here, it's not the plants. Plants have no effect on humidity in your home. That is just a lie that people repeat. If your care is good, if you have good light and your plants are well watered and you know what you're doing, misting is an entirely neutral activity. Maybe net good because you can be like misting off dust and stuff. If you like misting and your plants are happy, mist away. It does not increase the humidity. It just doesn't. It will make your plant wet and then your plant will dry. The issue is if you have subpar care and you mist, it can make things worse. Plants don't like staying wet. They come from the tropics, they get rained on a lot, but it's also warm and windy. So they dry off. They don't mind being wet and then being dry. What they don't like is being wet all the time. Pebble trays, they're thrown around a lot. Before I started filming this video, I set up a pebble tray, and I will put in a clip of the hygrometer before I did this. And the hygrometer always stays here. I've not moved it, so it was at whatever this room is. And we will now check it. Where is it? It's behind me. It was about an hour ago. I don't know how long it would take for a pebble tray to work. And I actually can't remember. I think the hygrometer was at about 57. And it's now at 55. Now, I'm not going to say that pebble trays decrease the humidity. It's probably just chance. But they don't increase humidity. If you have one plant that you just think, I think it's humidity that is stopping it from growing, I would recommend a terrarium if you don't think it's worth getting a humidifier. This actual thing was only £15 and I saw it and I was like, oh, cute. And then I saw the Monstera obliqua. If I tip this to show you, will it all just slide to one side? We'll see, won't we? So it's a very, very beautiful plant. It has these like massive holes in the leaves. It's like an Adansonii, but more. So I do have it in here because it will grow faster, but I don't think it really needs it. But I have found that my begonias do very badly outside of terrariums and very well in them. But that is very much a your mileage may vary thing, because begonias are one of those things that people either struggle to grow or don't struggle to grow, and I think it has as much to do with your environment as it does the care. Sometimes they like your house, sometimes they don't, and there's often not a lot you can do about it. So yeah, the only things that will actually increase your humidity in a significant way are terrariums, i.e. a small enclosed space, or a humidifier. These don't. And people will tell you that they do. Monty Don mentions misting houseplants. Like, calm down, Monty, it isn't true. They are just not that big of a deal, and I wasted way too much time thinking about them. This may be controversial, but I stand by it. If you have your light and your water sorted, none of the rest of it matters. And I've thought this for a while because I used to work with a lady who knew nothing about houseplants other than that she really liked them. And she kept them very, very well. And she kept them in whatever compost she was using for her outside plants. So yeah, my tips for soil are buy houseplant potting mix. Literally go to a garden centre and buy something that says it's suitable for houseplants. It will just have less compost in it. You don't want any compost in houseplant potting mix because it will just attract fungus gnats or fruit flies. You don't want that. Then you want some sort of chunk. When you first get into houseplants, people go on about a well-draining, chunky mix, but they don't tell you what the chunks are made of. And there are various types, and I've tried all types of soil, and I do not think it matters what chunk. I don't even really think it matters the ratios that you use, as long as you can keep on top of the watering. So I don't use a particularly chunky soil mix because I tend to underwater. If you tend to overwater, put loads of chunks in and then the water will just drain through and it won't be an issue. So your chunks. Orchid bark. If you're an overwaterer, orchid bark is a great one because it doesn't really absorb much water. Perlite. Perlite is good. Perlite's better for underwaterers because it's quite small, it doesn't create as many air pockets, and it absorbs water. Leca is a great one. It doesn't really matter if you're an underwater or an overwaterer, and plants can live in 100% leca, so the ratio really doesn't matter. It absorbs water, it creates a lot of air pockets. A 50-50 mix of houseplant soil and leca it's also cheap and lasts forever. The only thing it doesn't have is nutrients, but neither does perlite, and orchid bark only has nutrients as it rots. So this is in reference to repotting. Repotting is something a little bit like humidity that people think is a bigger deal than it is. It's not a big deal, despite this. It is very much like moving house. Moving house is very stressful, but you can make it less stressful. For example, if you move house, but you're not moving jobs and you're not moving very far, it's much less stressful than if you're changing everything. So when you repot, don't mess around with the roots. Try not to change what you're putting it into too much. And don't move it from where it was. Keep it in the same position. I mean, that's not the same as moving house because you wouldn't move into a different house in the same spot, but, you know, it's not the perfect analogy. The other thing is when you move house, you might want to buy a bigger house, but you only want it to be a little bit bigger. Otherwise, you'd just be lost in it and it would be a waste. It's the same with houseplants. I quite often uppot my plants into a pot that is far too big because it's the only plant I've got. But as I said, I'm an underwaterer, so it isn't that big of a deal. If you're an overwaterer, it can be a big deal because the soil can hold a lot of water and then it never dries out and then you get root rot. The other issue isn't bad for the plant, but it can be a bit of a pain, and it's not specific to Monstera, but Monstera are known for it. If you put them in a massive pot, they're like, great. Don't put any more leaves out until I've filled this with roots. And then they almost get out of the habit of growing leaves and you just get roots. And I have a Monstera like that. Loves producing an aerial root, loves producing a subterranean root. It's not got a lot of interest in growing leaves. And I genuinely don't know what to do with it. It is in great light. Maybe it's underwatered, but yeah. So yeah, don't overthink repotting. Just move it from one pot into a slightly bigger pot. Try not to mess around with the roots too much. You're done. I just want to quickly go back to substrate. I've tried them all. I've got plants in water, I've got plants in soil, I've got plants in hydroponics, I've got leca, pon. There isn't one that's easier than the others. In fact, what I've ended up with is they're all in some sort of Frankenstein mix. I've got my ZZ plant in literal garden compost, then a layer of leca, then just coir. If you get sucked, as I did, into the hydroponics videos and everyone's saying that's so much easier, you can do a routine, that is true. But I actually don't think it's any easier. It's just the works in different areas. Basically, you have to just try different substrates until you can find what you like. As I said, I've got a whole video on, or I'm going to do a whole video on keeping lilies in water. I've watched a lot of videos on this and nobody mentions how often you have to clean the glass to stop algae getting all over it. For orchids, highly recommend no substrate at all. I know this has got water in it, but look how green those have got. I don't know if you can remember before they were silver, but they've just got all green. Keeping orchids like this has been a life changer for me. I literally just fill up the jar whenever I'm watering. I fill up the glass, water all my plants, and then I tip what's left into. I've got a philodendron golden dragon in a Lechuza pot, and I just empty the water into there. Fertiliser is another thing that really stressed me out when I first got into houseplants, and it turned out, and I did experiments on this, it is absolutely not a big deal. I've tried so many houseplant fertilisers, I've read so much on them about how you've got to use a complete one, you've got to do this, don't use seaweed because it's not strong enough. For a start, there is almost no research on fertilising houseplants because there is no money in keeping houseplants alive. All the research goes into things like tomato feed because there's money in growing tomatoes. There is more happening now, but it's very early days. Go into a garden centre, buy a houseplant feed, and feed your plant with it. Or don't. I have gone literal years without feeding any of my plants, and they have been fine. I have fed my plants every single watering for years, and they have been fine. Slightly healthier, but certainly not enough for me to advocate everybody immediately fertilise all their plants. The one thing I will say about fertiliser is do not use DIY fertiliser. It will attract gnats. I have no idea whether banana peels will help your plant. I do know fungus gnats and fruit flies, love them. Stay away. This sea also toxicity. This is another thing where people panic about having toxic plants around their pets and their kids. And I do get it. And I'm not saying, oh yeah, absolutely, it's fine. What I'm saying is there is almost no research in it. If you think this plant is living on the ground in the rainforest, someone's going to come along and eat him. Like, there's herbivores in the rainforest. So he has what are essentially very sharp cells in his leaves. And when you eat them, it will give you an upset stomach. So that's why he has those. Unless your child or pet or anything has something else that would make that worse, you don't need to panic if your cat accidentally eats a monstera leaf. Obviously keep an eye on them, take them to the vet if you're worried, but it's not an immediate, oh my god, they're going to die moment. They'll probably just throw up and feel unwell. There are in fact some plants, spider plants, that will make cats high, so if that's something that you like to do, go ahead. But yeah, in terms of knowing exactly like the levels of these Rapheed cells that make you ill, we know that Dieffenbachia have lots because they can make you quite ill. Again, they're unlikely to actually like kill you, but they will make you, they've got more of these cells than peace lilies, so yeah. This is just sad but true, and I've tried a lot of pest eradication methods over the years, and I'm a lazy person. I'm an underwaterer because I'm lazy. I have a full-time job and I'm studying, so also I'm lazy. So if I have pests, I tend to turn a blind eye until it's an awful problem. I think I've tried everything when it comes to pest eradication, apart from systemic pesticide, which is interestingly what everybody says works, but they are illegal in the UK. So I haven't used them. People can get them. I don't know if they're like illegal in that the police will come and arrest you, or whether they just aren't sold. But I tend to think there might be a reason, so I'm like, I'm just not gonna do that. I have found two things that work for lazy people and houseplant care. The first one is predatory mites. The only problem is that with those is that you have to keep cycling them, and it's not as easy as just buying them and they'll eat all your pests. The pest that I tend to get is thrips, and if you buy the predatory mites that eat the thrips babies and the thrips adults, because it's two different types, they'll also eat each other. So what I tend to do is buy the ones that eat the larvae and the eggs, and I just kind of pick off the adults myself. That leads to the second thing that works for pest care, and this is pest care, the opposite, pest eradication. The more time you spend with your plants, the less chance they will have pests. Also, going back to the first point, if your plants are healthy and well cared for, pests aren't interested. Their cells are thicker and healthier and more difficult to get through. So, trial and error, find something that works for you. Some people like washing the leaves down. That works well, but I do that once and then I'm like, I'm never doing that again, it's boring. Systemics, if you can get them, try them. If you're happy to. Predators, love that. It's don't turn a blind eye, just keep going. Check them as often as you can. Squish the adults, and over time, you're bigger than them. You'll be able to get them all. This is probably, advice that I'll give that I would never take, and you don't have to either. But if you get get a couple of plants and really work out, you know, where did they get the best light, where did they grow the best, then add more gradually. And then, yeah, don't do the old ADHD, I'm going to buy 50 plants because this is what, I'm a plant person now, this is me now. And then get overwhelmed and let them all die. And I say that as somebody that's done that so many times, but yeah. Don't buy, do I have one? I must have one, I've got so many. The frickin' blue things. What's interesting about houseplants is some, they get one thrip and they're like, right, that's it for me, I'm dead. This one, I can see one. This is a sad looking plant. She's still bloomed. She don't give a shit. It was covered in thrips and I was sick of it. So I was starting to pick them off every day. And then I was like, what if those stupid blue sticky things actually work? I always suspected they couldn't because that would be so easy. Apparently thrips are attracted to blue. So I bought a pack for, let's say a £5, I can't remember, of 50. And I got most of them out. A lot of my plants have these sticky chops on. I have literally not caught one thrips on them. The key seems to be if you treat your plants well, they will grow well, and then you don't get as many pests. And don't have more than you can handle. I've actually forgotten what's on these. Oh, this is so true. I feel very sorry for Pothos and ZZ plants. So many articles say, if you've got a low light spot, buy a Pothos, buy a ZZ plant. These plants don't want that. They won't die because they're very good at not dying. Pothos and ZZ plants are just hard. They're just the gangster of the plant world. And rather than celebrating that, we're like, I'll just stick them in any dark corner. No, don't. Get a Pothos. If you've not had a plant and you're interested in getting a plant, get a Pothos. They are the best and they are so maligned. They grow incredibly fast. They propagate easily if you put them in the light. Now, Pothos aren't Pothos. There is another plant called a Pothos, but that's not this topic. Pothos are an epipremnum aureum. And all like the Marble Queen and Pearls and Jade and all that, they're all different variegation patterns. But just a bog standard golden Pothos. They come from Polynesia and they can handle bright light. They are climbers, which suggests they literally want to climb into the sun. I mean, probably to the detriment. They can't handle that much light. They are not going to burn in North Yorkshire. Mine is sat right in my south-facing window. I'm going to grow it this year. Big. And if you grow it well, and by grow it well, I mean water it every week, stick it right in the brightest window. And if you like, it doesn't need watering every week, change the soil to something that dries faster. And you watch it grow, give it something to climb. They grow these big, gorgeous fenestrated leaves. And yet no one knows, like, that's never mentioned. There are always these like trailing plants and full and bushy, and they are nice like that. If you want to grow, like keep propagating it and make it full and bushy and have it trail, that's fine. But you can grow them like big and massive leaves, and it's just not ever talked about, and it's just so desperately sad. ZZ plants is another one because I think the problem with ZZ plants is they are so adapted to their environment so perfectly that we're like, oh my god, it'll also survive in the absolute opposite of that. ZZ plants and a lot of succulents come from very, very arid environments. They are very exposed. They are very, very bright and sunny. And they can also get very cold. They are designed to survive. If you can kill a ZZ plant, that's actually quite impressive because thousands of years of evolution have come up with this bulletproof plant. And you killed it. I keep my ZZ plant in aggressively medium light. It's there. You can't see it. It is, let's say, 6 feet away from a south-facing window and 8 feet away from a north-facing window. It grows like a weed. And it has these tubers underneath that it fills with water. And it is in the worst soil imaginable. I was saying about that before. It's compost, coir and leca. I would never need to water it because it takes that long to dry out and it just doesn't care. It's just, because I give it aggressively medium light, it's like, I can take anything. It's just the absolute best. And I hate that. And it's apartment therapy. Put it in a cupboard. I hate it so much. They deserve so much better. Point 10, I don't know if it's on camera, it's right at the bottom. Don't waste money you don't have on expensive plants. And that seems like quite obvious advice. I'm a very tight person, so I don't think I've ever spent... I have had 2 plants that were over £100. No, I haven't. I've had 1 plant that was over £100 and 1 plant that was 90. My boyfriend bought me both of them. Only one of them is still alive. The one that's still alive is my Thai constellation. The least rewarding plant ever to grow, because they don't. It has the most beautiful set of roots you've ever seen, and 2 quite shit leaves. I've got a video on it and someone said it's because it's not climbing anything. There are some people out there that say that Thai are crawlers. I think it's a climber. I've given it something to climb. It's just grown another aerial root. The other one was a Monstera dubia. That was, I think it was £150. It got thrips and died, and I was really sad. I'm going to get another one because now they're only £30, which actually is a bit much for me. So you can now buy Thais. They're about 50 quid. In America, you can see them for like $30. They are coming down in price. Monstera dubia, 30 quid, as I said. If you see a plant and you think, oh my God, that is the most beautiful plant I've ever seen. 1, there might be one that looks like it, so buy that. And 2, if it's that popular, it will go into tissue culture and it will be embarrassingly cheap. A few years ago, it was Monstera obliqua. Then it was Philodendron spiritus sancti. And it was the rarest plant in the world. It was thousands of pounds. And now they have little tissue culture seedlings for like 20 quid. So do not spend money that you do not have on plants that you cannot afford, because they will probably come down in price. There are some plants that haven't come down in price, and I think it's because they were anticipated to be a trend and weren't. The one I can think about is the Philodendron strawberry shake. So many plant influencers had the Philodendron strawberry shake. So I think they thought it would be as popular as the pink princess. But it looks a little bit ill somehow. The pink princess is a vibrant pink, but this is not. And it never really went anywhere. They do have them in my local garden centre. They're about £80, so they're not ridiculously expensive, but it's certainly more than I would pay for a plant that looks like that. It's also becoming way easier to buy tissue culture plants, not direct from the lab, but more or less. Also, people are tissue culturing at home. That's a thing people can do. So there'd be more like smaller hobbyists. So yeah, that is 10 things that I wish I'd known when I first started having houseplants. That, considering the sheer volume of houseplant articles that are out there on the internet, are still not really talked about that much because it's not making anybody any money. The next video I'm going to do is houseplant myths and essentially lies that I don't know if they've been put out there by Big Houseplant or if one person mentioned it once and then everyone repeated it, but they are worth knowing. I've not made it yet, so if you're early to this video, there'll be nothing here. So then you can subscribe and then it'll come up on the thing. So yeah, I will see you then. Bye.